Hello and welcome to the Fantasy Life Show. I'm your host, Ian Hartitz. It is, in fact, a great day to be great. It's a great day to go through all sorts of rankings changes and updates from a chaotic week one of preseason football. We are so back, ladies and mostly gentlemen. Rumor is we have never been so back, but of course, I cannot break down all this fantasy goodness alone. Accordingly, we are joined by SiriusXM's Mrs. Fantasy herself, Kendall Valenzuela. K-Dog, what's freaking up, man?
Ian, what's up? Happy Monday. Excited to be here. We get to overreact to preseason. We get to just parade around our takes and say that we were right because we always love to do that so early in the season. It's a great day, like you said. How are you doing?
I am doing great. It's one of these things, Kendall, where remember, if a player was bad in the preseason, it's just the preseason. Who cares? Why are we even talking about it? If they play good, though, that means that you, a scholar, are a certified ball knower, and you should be ready to victory lap until your legs fall off. So again, plenty to get to today. First, though, it's time for our DraftKings opening lines, breaking down the start of the preseason. That's right, Trayvon Henderson. Hand up, guys. I was thinking about trying to do the whole hockey approach. You know, I love how after games they do the 3 stars, and I was starting to prepare for the show, and I was just kind of like, okay, Trayvon Henderson, that's cool. Not so sure you all need to hear about Tanner McKee and Jarrett Stidham and some of the other top performers from the preseason. But K-Dog did want to, again, go through Mr. Henderson because, of course, he's been, I don't want to say someone that's been too just controversial in fantasy drafts. Pretty much everyone's had him ranked as a top 25 or so RB throughout the process. But, man, whatever you thought about him before, how could you not be impressed with this debut? Kind of helps when your first NFL touch goes 100 freaking yards back to the house on an electric kickoff return. Also took his 1 rush attempt for 18 yards on a sweep and caught 3 passes in limited action with Drake May. So again, Kendall, we knew he was explosive. We saw that. We knew there was pass catching ability. We saw that. And yes, we did see, again, basically split first team usage alongside Ramondre Stevenson. So is this just a matter, Kendall, where it's like, oh my God, I need to immediately rank Trayvon Henderson higher? Or is this maybe just us seeing stuff that, let's face it, we kind of already knew?
I was going to say, I feel like you and I, and basically everyone at Fantasy Life is pretty much in line with where we think Trayvon Henderson should be. So this is for the people that probably weren't all the way up to speed on Trayvon Henderson. And then you watch preseason last week and then you say, oh, shoot, I should maybe have a little bit more of Trayvon Henderson, or maybe I should move him up my rankings. But I think where we have him is pretty like consensus wise. I think we're right there because we knew Trayvon Henderson, while we are expecting a split workload. That's how Dwayne McFarland has him projected at fantasylife.com. That's how Friedman has both of these guys projected, is like this split workload. The one thing with him is that he's always kind of been this kind of guy where they just want a home run hitter. And I think that's what he brings, and that's what he showed over the weekend, is like he can be that guy for the Patriots, which they've been lacking for like a really long time, if we're going to be totally honest. So even if you see the split workload, and this is something that we've gotten a ton of questions on Sirius, it's like, even if you see a split workload, Trayvon Henderson is a home run hitter. So he can, even with the split workload, he can really be someone on your fantasy team that outperforms his ADP. So you don't have to be scared about a 1A, 1B situation. And he just proved why over the weekend. It's like he's just going to be that guy. He's that talented. So I think it just kind of, showed us what we already thought he could be, which is exciting.
On our screen, shout out YouTube, TV, X viewers, wherever you happen to be consuming us today. We do have, again, week 1 preseason utilization. Here's the key, though, only with the starters. The great Dwayne "The Rock" McFarland has an awesome free article I will add over at fantasylife.com that, again, goes into the nitty-gritty usage notes, specifically with the starters. That's the main stuff we're trying to get to at the end of the day with the preseason, okay? Cool plays are great, and football's back. We all like highlights, but again, more so it's just trying to get some sort of semblance of these depth charts because, as I've complained about at length over the course of these last few weeks, the unofficial ones that we get from team interns just really aren't all that useful for us. So really the big change here, I think that maybe we can actually say is surprising, Kendall, is the route rate. I mean, we're talking about 75% route rate for Henderson, just 38% for Ramondre Stevenson. And that target share is pretty wild to see too. So I actually did talk to Dwayne before the show. His computer's still on the fritz, but we will have him back here soon enough. And Dwayne actually was quoted as saying Stevenson is about to get his ASS kicked all over the place. Dwayne's all in on Trayvon Henderson at this point. And again, it is that big difference in the receiving usage, okay? So updated projections from Dwayne actually have Henderson and Stevenson relatively neck and neck in rush attempts, 167 to 163. The targets, though, are where things get interesting. Dwayne has it updated, 60 targets for Trayvon, just 23 for Stevenson. So in the overall just course of the RB rankings, Kendall's, let's not freak out too much. We still aren't expecting the Patriots to be this top 5 scoring offense. Offensive line, while improved and is moving in the right direction, still not exactly a group expected to be, a top 5 in the league or anything like that. So I think once you start getting into that mid RB2 range, okay, James Cook, Kenneth Walker, or Marion Hampton are off the board, I think you can actually rank Henderson as high as about RB15, RB16. I have him RB19 right now, right next to RJ Harvey, who we're going to be getting into in a little bit. Where do you fall? Because it does feel a little bit weird for me to be ranking him ahead of James Conner and Alvin Kamara and these guys. But even if we can expect a few more touches from those, as we saw, Henderson doesn't need the ball more than a few times to make some massive plays out there.
Yeah, I'm moving him and I have him at 18. So I'm right there with you. I'm excited about him. And it's one of those things where when I compare guys, I like to say sometimes like, okay, James Conner's right there. David Montgomery at some point, they were ahead of him in my rankings. But then you look at the potential production that you just talked about, and you look at the pass catchers and you look at the age as well. I say to myself, okay, I'm taking a little bit of a shot on a guy who's younger, who could get more of the passing work in an offense that maybe is not as exciting as, let's say, the Detroit Lions with David Montgomery. But it's just the upside. And that's something that we always want to swing for in fantasy football. And so I think at the price that you're getting Trayvon Henderson right there, RB, between 18, 19, 20 in our consensus rankings, I think it's worth it because Friedman put out a really good article yesterday too about running backs that he has projected for 50 plus targets. And we always know that running backs, anyone with fantasy correlation, we're looking at touchdowns, but the running backs with the pass catching ability, with the targets through the air, that makes them all the more like juicy to go and get. So kind of that's where I'm looking in and I say, okay, who do I want? James Conner, David Montgomery, do I want to go with some of the younger guys? And that's where I say we do so many drafts that I'm like, I'm going to take it. Not that I think it's taking a chance necessarily, but for some people it might be risky. And I think it's a risk worth taking.
I will say, just again, based on the usage, one really good thing that I like to see was Drake May's willingness to check it down. Again, we've talked about it. Yep. May literally had more scramble yards than Lamar Jackson last year, right? He even scrambled in for a touchdown during the course of that preseason game. And sometimes when you do get these dual threat quarterbacks, you don't see the same sort of target volume for the running backs because, the QB is taken off instead. So good to see May having that willingness to, again, check it down to Henderson twice. Also had design screen thrown there as well. So, Kendall, I was honestly just hoping they would have put him in bubble wrap after the kickoff return. So, appreciate seeing him out there, but that ADP is just going to keep on climbing if we continue to see him throughout the rest of the preseason. So still available in round 6 in a lot of these home leagues. Wouldn't be surprised if that continues to creep up closer to round 5, maybe even round 4. Make sure you guys continue to check out the Fantasy Life new and improved I will add ADP tool. Feel free to use code Ian Kendall. Maybe just type in a random name. You can get more than the 20% off that we are currently offering with that. Maybe, who's to say? So code Ian, code Kendall. Either way, guys, this has been our DraftKings opening lines. Football fans, the countdown is on and the road to kickoff starts now. From bold predictions to preseason hype, this is the perfect time to lock in your picks and join the action. And accordingly, guys, I partnered with DraftKings Sportsbook to bring you a killer offer. Place a $10 plus NFL futures bet and get a Survivor Pool ticket automatically. Back your squad and take a shot at the $1 million plus top prize. All you have to do is download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and sign up using my promo code FANTASYLIFE. The crown is yours. And Survivor Pools really are simple. You pick one NFL team team to win each week, survive in advance. But here's the twist. You can't pick the same team twice. Strategy counts. Think you can outlast the field? Want to make your picks even more exciting? Use your bets to explore same-game parlays for a shot at an even bigger payout. Stack multiple bets from one matchup for max drama. And if sports betting isn't live in your state yet, no sweat. You can still play DraftKings Daily Fantasy Sports for a chance to win real cash prizes. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Sign up using promo code FANTASYLIFE. Place a $10 plus NFL futures bet and claim your ticket to the Survivor Pool. That's promo code FANTASYLIFE only at DraftKings Sportsbook. As we were saying, K-Dog, performance in the preseason isn't necessarily the biggest deal, but for some of these rookies who we haven't seen play at the professional level, it is a nice thing to be able to actually glean into. So I wanted to take some time to talk about really the three biggest names, with all due respect to Mr. Tyler Shuck, headlining this quarterback class, kicking things off with Giants first rounder Jaxson Dart. I actually really liked what I saw out here, Kendall. He completed 12 of 19 passes, 154 yards and a touchdown, didn't take a sack, and he showed off some of that super fantasy-friendly rushing upside, 24 yards on the ground, including a gain of 19 on a nice scramble where he avoided a sack. So had designed QB draw in there and threw a beautiful touchdown down the left sideline to little Jordan Humphrey. So yes, the fact that I just said little Jordan Humphrey can tell you that some of this was coming with backups and against backups, so I don't want to freak out. But again, Kendall, was really just about seeing that live arm strength and just the mobility that, again, really forces defenses to cover every square inch of the field for better or worse. So Jaxson Dart, going back to school here, I would honestly give him an A- on this grade. I wish this schedule for the Giants would be a little bit easier for him, but really liked what I saw out of him in that debut. What say you?
Yeah, I would give him a solid A as well, because like we say, hey, we wish that the Giants had a better schedule, but I don't know, Ian, for us in fantasy, and we're going to talk about this in a little bit, maybe later on in the show, just a little tease there, but I've got something to say about Jaxson Dart later on. They have the toughest schedule in the NFL this season when we look at strength of schedule. So to me, that means I think we see Jaxson Dart sooner rather than later. And like you said, what we saw 12 of 19, 154 and a touchdown to, yes, it was little Jordan Humphrey, but that's okay. We're still counting it even though it's the preseason. I just think we see him sooner rather than later. I think the questions, that we're going to have is, how does he look if he ever has to go in, whether it's Russell Wilson just not, living up to expectations that they have or going down with injuries. I know they still have Jameis Winston on the squad, but, maybe we see him go elsewhere if another team has a quarterback injury. You never know. But in my opinion, Jaxson Dart, they exactly, please. They took him for a reason. And I know it's not crazy strong draft capital, but, this whole organization is on the hot seat. They want to win. They have a Malik Neighbors down there. So to me, I thought it was pretty good. If you're not drafting Jaxson Dart in, smaller leagues, if we're talking super flex, maybe he could be a stash, but even then you don't really need him there. I think he's going to be someone down the line though, that we're looking back at and saying, okay, it's his time. Where can I go pick him up?
And again, it is really that rushing upside that even if we do see some day one struggles as a passer, it could make him fantasy relevant in a hurry. But I did want to look at the schedule here for a second, because Kendall, last night I was trying to figure out when exactly could we expect Dart to start. And yeah, anyone that hasn't seen this, man, whoa, buddy, this is not cool. Someone's forgetting, a friendly fourth place schedule, no breaks being afforded to the New York Football Giants. I mean, I would think that, okay, best case, the earliest, okay, they probably start off 0-4. Like this would just be how we get Jaxson Dart, okay? Commanders, Cowboys, Chiefs, and Chargers. The Giants are effectively underdogs in all four of those games. So not ideal to be going into the, home of the Cooter Doodle tribe down there in New Orleans and everything. But man, that is literally, guys, the one game where we have the Giants favored to win this year. So week 5 would be cool. Maybe we could see week 7, because week 6 against the Eagles on Thursday, so they would have a little bit more time there. Mm-hmm. Then again, debuting in Denver, Mile High, that's hardly ideal either. I would think the latest is going to be week 15 after that bye, where actually it finally does lighten up for the fantasy playoffs. So Kendall, I'm hoping for week 5. What say you?
Yeah, hoping for week 5, realistically, maybe week 7. Maybe Russ is done with the, I'm going back home to Denver with the team that, did me so wrong and dirty, I guess. So maybe I'll say week 7, and that's where I'm going to go. The big question, Ian, and this is what I've talked with Thor Nystrom about, is like the system at Ole Miss wasn't, you don't usually get big, beautiful quarterbacks out of that system with Ole Miss. And so it's one of those things where it might take a while once we see him. So I do just want to say that while I do love Jaxson Dart, and I do think we see him sooner rather than later. Like the system that he came out of doesn't necessarily mean that he is just all of a sudden going to show up and be this amazing quarterback, especially for fantasy, but he runs. So that's why we're kind of talking about it. Same way we talk about Jalen Milroe. It might not be pretty. You might just want to turn the TV off, but once he gets out there, you're like, oh, okay, he scored me, some solid fantasy points.
I can picture it now. Pretty long flight from New York out to Denver. Russ is doing his stupid high knees on the plane, and Brian Dable just finally snaps, gives Jaxson Dart the job right there, or so we can dream. Let's talk about Shedeur Sanders, someone who obviously has been in the news pretty much every day ever since his, infamous draft day fall. But just speaking again of what he did on the football field, I thought it was encouraging, Kendall. I mean, the touchdowns were absolute darts. The one rolling out to his left, split a pair of defenders in the back of the end zone, had another nice one on a slant route that, again, just showed off some of the velocity. Also, I was pleasantly surprised to see his athleticism hold up enough to get away from some of these pass rushers, because that was the one thing at Colorado where you just didn't have the first round tools. And I do think at the end of the day, as much as we can talk about the interviews or this or that, we just had a guy who wasn't an overwhelming athlete, didn't have overwhelming stature, and didn't have the strongest arm in the world. So I personally was questioning if that, wizardry, the off-script stuff that he made happen in college would hold up at the next level. And at least for one game, it really did for the most part. So I know we didn't have the entire starting defense out there or anything. But again, there were just several plays, particularly on, third and long, even the 4th and 1, where we did see Shedeur still manage to evade a few pressures before getting the ball off. So that said, still did see that bad tendency for him to really just drip back further into the pocket. Certainly has some things he needs to clean up. Also a few inaccurate passes short. But again, Kendall, 138 yards, pair of touchdowns, only took 2 sacks, didn't lose many yards on it, and picked up 19 yards running the ball. I'm at least more optimistic that he has a chance to actually beat out Dylan Gabriel and get this job. That said, we should remember Gabriel was hurt. Joe Flacco wasn't out there. Kenny Pickett is still dealing with a hamstring injury. A step in the right direction. That said, I'm just going to go with a B here.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with an A for Shedeur Sanders, because I think he has an uphill battle to climb anyway. So he has to take advantage of all the opportunities that they are giving him, whether it's because of the injuries or whatever else. But I think he did a great job out there. And like I said, Ian, he has an uphill battle. He has the opportunity to go out there and play well, and he did. But unfortunately for him, we're gonna have to see that every single week in and week out, for him to be considered, even considered in the conversation of being a starter, maybe after Joe Flacco, because I think that's where we're all leaning, is that Joe Flacco eventually gets the start. But we're not assuming that Joe Flacco is going to be the QB1 every single week for this team. I think that's kind of consensus here. So it's just who would be next man up. And so for Shedeur Sanders, I give him an A, because he's already, like I said, fighting for his life with this quarterback room because of the draft fall and everything that we saw on draft night. But what we saw from him, I think it's encouraging. I saw that he's been a lead at avoiding negative plays, and that's something that we've talked about before here. But it's just one of those things where he just has to keep going, because like you said, he's been in the news every single day. He'll continue to be in the news every single day. So the one game he has a bad one, it's going to be, what did they do? What happened? But this was a good outing for him.
Had the watch celebration just going on left and right out there. It's provocative. It had me going out there, Kendall. So also enjoyed the mic'd up, clip of him talking to Myles Garrett on the sideline saying, I wouldn't mind you swiping me, feeling what that's like. And Myles like, we're going to need you, young man. I don't want to be hurting you out there. So yeah, I do think, be careful what you ask for, Shedeur. Last one we want to get to, guys, is number 1 overall pick, Cam Ward. We're actually going to talk about we're actually going to talk about Cam Ward, Kendall. We're not going to talk about people not talking about Cam Ward, which seems to be the main topic here. But again, it was a solid performance. We didn't see as much of Cam Ward as we actually got out of Shedeur and Jaxson Dart. Obviously, unlike those two, Cam Ward has already cemented as the week 1 starter. But yeah, 5 for 8, 67 yards, 0 sacks, 0 interceptions. Did have one drop, and also had another instance where it looked like he was trying to throw the ball away. Ended up falling very close to a couple defenders. So that really was my only issue. I love how calm, cool, and collected this guy is. He does give off Jordan Love vibes, Geno Smith to an extent as well. But man, that was one of the things that popped up at Miami. High rate of turnover-worthy plays when he was under pressure. But at the same time, found a way to force-feed the ball to Calvin Ridley. Had a couple real nice darts out there, especially to his left, getting his number 1 receiver the ball. Again, I have gone out of my way to complain to Dwayne McFarland about our Calvin Ridley projection roughly 30 times this offseason. So we'll see if Dwayne will finally budge. But I'm going to go with a B+ here, Kendall. Again, watch out on decision-making a little bit. I understand he might have gotten away with one there, but I really like seeing the arm talent there. And I was just happy to see, again, that same cool demeanor that really defines his play at Miami.
Yeah, I'd go with the B here, right? Because we never, according to everyone, we never talk about Cam Ward enough. So here we are, Ian, talking about Cam Ward. We're good. I'm kind of glad though, because our Calvin Ridley shares are safe because he didn't totally ball
Oof.
out over the weekend. But thank goodness for that. I think it's the things that you just said with Cam Ward. You know what we're looking for in the preseason. Not only he has to get in there, he has to learn the system, he has to get up to NFL speed, but it's establishing more comfort, right, in accepting good routine plays. That's something that we didn't necessarily see in college. And what you kind of referred to over there, he was really okay with taking the risk in college and just saying, you know what, I'm just going to heave it up there and hope someone comes down with it. You can't do that here, and so we kind of know that now. So that's why I say a B. It's something that he's probably just not going to get better at until he gets out there, because preseason speed, we always talk about it. Who are those guys out there? It's not the same as what he's going to see in week one. But I'll give it a solid B because, like you said, yeah, we're not going out of our way to draft him. I mean, Superflex is a different conversation, but I think with me, there is excitement about Cam Ward, maybe being someone halfway through the season, midway through, we're like, okay, this is good. And like I said, he's getting our Calvin Ridley shares up. So I'm excited for him, but I'll give him a B.
Honestly, my biggest kind of concern was just watching this going, we're throwing screens to Tyler Lockett in the year 2025.
Come
Van
on, we
Jefferson is a
respect
starting
Tyler
receiver out
Lockett.
here.
Come
I do.
on.
I love Tyler. You love Tyler Lockett. We all love Tyler Lockett. But man, is there a worse receiver to try to give a yak play to in the NFL? That dude's preserved his health. You got to do what you got to do when you're 5'9", $160, dripping wet. I get it, Kendall. And I know as a Seattle Seahawks lifer, Tyler is very near and dear to your heart. But that's
He
just my only
is.
concern with expecting too high of highs from Cam Ward. We have one high-ish end place to go with the football. I mean, just realistically, if you're an NFL team, Calvin Ridley ideally is like a very good number 2 receiver, not your entire freaking passing game. But that's what we're dealing with. And accordingly, very happy to target Calvin Ridley, starting to creep up closer and closer to that wide receiver 2 line. So make sure, again, you guys are keeping an eye on these ever-changing ADPs. So again, more good than bad from these QBs, which is great. I want every quarterback to be awesome, Kendall, because guess what? Makes the games that much more fun to watch. So good stuff on the quarterbacks, but now time to get into some more fantasy-friendly RB notes. It's time for our utilization report presented by DraftKings. Doing our best Dwayne McFarland impressions today. My hair is not nearly as good as Mr. Dwayne's, but again, invite you guys to check out all of his great work over on fantasylife.com. Truly one of the most actionable and easy reads articles in the industry when it comes to, again, deciphering what matters and what doesn't matter in preseason and then obviously into week one. So with all that said, Kendall, want to get into just, I guess, some hot takes that people may have had after the preseason and just try to buy or sell if that actually is what we should be believing based on the utilization. Starting things off with Denver Broncos, RB1, RB5. The unofficial depth chart told us RB5, but RJ Harvey was the clear-cut running back, y'all, for the Broncos. Still saw some J.K. Dobbins, but man, we're talking about Harvey during the first 3 drives with the starters, playing 67% of the snaps, getting all the rush attempts, and also intriguingly, 45% route rate and 20% target share. So still did see J.K. Dobbins in the clear long down and distance areas. That's typically when you just want the running back in there to pass block. Often when it's 3rd and 15, the quarterback isn't really trying to dump it off in the first place because then you're just kind of admitting defeat. So everything really went right for Harvey. There is a funny conspiracy going on, Kendall, that Dobbins couldn't find his helmet when things were starting. So perhaps he was supposed to get the start. Maybe Boobie Miles was out there stealing it. Shout out Friday Night Lights. So again, saw Benjamin Albright. I think Sean Payton might have mentioned it as well. I don't think there's too much truth to it because at the end of the day, Dobbins was out there in the first drive. But I will just say, we've seen wonkiness from Sean Payton in Denver and even in the preseason before. So I wouldn't immediately just assume that Dobbins is going to take a complete backseat. But either way, Kendall, how can we not say this was a very good sign here for RJ Harvey?
I was so pumped. Even if J.K. Dobbins was missing his helmet, I don't care. That's a win for us RJ Harvey truthers here, Ian. I don't care how it comes, what form it comes in. It's just like one of those things where you say, all right, perfect, RJ Harvey's out there. No, I was excited about it, especially that targets per route run down at the bottom, 40% to 25. Like, that's what we're talking about here. He was highly involved in the passing game, and it's one of those things that we referenced earlier in the show, but it's like these running backs that have 50 plus projected targets for the 2025 season are going to be cheat codes at some point this season. And so for me, I've always loved RJ Harvey. Even when J.K. Dobbins came over, I was like, there's no way we're going to be super scared of J.K. Dobbins at this point. And I'm still not. Not that we'd never want injuries, but if there was an injury to J.K. Dobbins, like it would be RJ Harvey to the moon. So I've been picking up and scooping up as many RJ Harvey shares as I can, Ian, because people, did get a little bit nervous with the Dobbins signing. So I'm like, that's fine. I'm still going to take as much J.K. Dobbins as I can, but I loved this outing. It's just a Sean Payton pick, right? We saw what he was able to do in college. We saw what he was able to do as a pass catcher. Why would we think that would be any different in the NFL? I know in the past, the Broncos, like Javonte Williams, Jaleel McLaughlin, Audric Estime, there were so many guys over there. But when you have two solid guys like this, especially with RJ Harvey at his draft pick, I love him.
I'm right next to Trayvon Henderson right now. I go back and forth by the day on who I prefer. Right now, it's Harvey. Even if I like Henderson, the talent, a little bit more, I just think the Broncos clear in terms of scoring upside, in terms of their offensive system, and in terms of their offensive line. Those tend to be kind of the things, along with talent that we are trying to evaluate with any given running back. And again, Harvey, as we all know, really did, get the absolute nuts landing spot when he did get selected by the Denver Broncos. So Sean Payton, 14 of 15 years in New Orleans, he actually enabled a top 18 fantasy RB. Wouldn't be surprised if Harvey is the next great one, and a long line of very good ones there. So I did see some people doing the whole screenshot. Why did he not run through the B gap? Why did he go outside instead? I don't know, guys. Like when we don't even know the point of attack reference for these running backs, I struggle to put too much stock in that sort of thing. Also, will note that smarter minds than myself with this, like the great Matt Waldman, didn't really think it was that big of an issue. So again, more so concerned here with the usage elements as opposed to performance. It was just his NFL debut in the preseason after all. Kendall, let's talk about a backfield that, again, really has been a hot topic the entire offseason. That is Liam Cohen's new Jacksonville Jaguars, featuring Travis Etienne, Tank Bigsby, and your favorite fantasy analyst's favorite late-round sleeper, Bashaw Tutin. However, at least for 1 week, it did seem to be the Travis Etienne show. 100% of the snaps with Trevor Lawrence. That said, Kendall, as we see sometimes in the preseason, it does seem to be more of a drive-by-drive thing. So Etienne played drive 1, Tank Bigsby had the next 2, and then we had Bashaw Tutin mixing in after that. I will note that LaQuint Allen actually got to enter the offensive attack before Tutin. He was in there for a long 3rd and 13 on the second drive of the game. So again, just one data point. I would expect in the regular season for Jacksonville and Liam Cohen to be mixing things up a little bit more. But I will say, Kendall, after reading a ton of training camp reports about Bigsby actually being the first guy out, pretty good news for Travis Etienne for him to, again, get that first drive at the starters.
Yeah. Ian, I can't express enough how much of a mess this backfield feels like. I feel like I get duped every time I take one of them. And so that's why it's way easier to take them in best ball, because I'm like, okay, it's drafted and forget it. And there, I don't care. But I've been thinking a lot, we talk about the high stakes leagues. We've got, big drafts coming up here shortly. And I'm like, which one would I be comfortable riding off into the sunset with? And my answer might be none of them. But Etienne, I did have to look back on my priors and say, you know what, we're only 2 years removed from his big season. So maybe I need to take that into consideration. But it just, to me, it feels like it could be a mess. And this is why it's so important in the preseason to look at the data from Dwayne McFarland. That article is live at fantasylife.com and 100% free, which you all should go and check out. But I'm curious what it looks like next week. Like if we see this same thing, or then if it's going to be Bashaw Tutin, and then it's going, then they just keep going, then it's going to be Tank Bigsby. That's what I'm worried about. So I'm not moving anyone in my rankings right now, just because I still feel like this is a jumbled mess and could be a 3-headed monster. But I'm curious what you're doing. If you're comfortable taking one of them above the rest, who would it be?
I had Bigsby literally one spot ahead of Etienne. And after seeing this, I just made that swap. Okay. So I'm not completely rearranging, the entire nucleus of our running back ranks over here. But again, I think it's enough. It's our most meaningful data point so far that tells us that Etienne is the RB1, y'all. So we'll give Etienne a little bit of slack last season. Again, it's almost like the DeAndre Swift thing with the Bears. Like we're being told okay, the Jaguars and the Bears scheme was horrible. The play calling did no favors. The offensive line sucks. So yeah, how can you be blaming blaming Caleb Williams or Trevor Lawrence. Doesn't a little bit of that also go to the running back? Like, can't we be giving them a little bit of slack as well? So
No.
ETN, we do have two separate seasons of RB. Hard no from Kendall. We do have two separate examples of RB1 level performance there. And again, I hear what you're saying, Kendall. It is uncertain, but because of that, so is their ADP. Like, we're going to show you guys our Fantasy Life ADP tool right now, and it's that uncertainty that causes these guys to be so affordable. I mean, over at ESPN, we're talking about ETN being the highest priced guy at pick 130. I mean, we're talking about top 50 wide receivers, all the good onesies at quarterback and tight end already being gone. It's not that way everywhere. Sleeper, real-time sports, you're going to have to use a bit more of a premium pick over there. But man, Kendall, again, if I'm able to get a guy that potentially could be the starting running back for a theoretically ascending offense, that is a perfect late round pick in my opinion.
No, you're right. I mean, and ambiguous backfields is something we always talk about, right? Where we're like, hey, take a shot, because that's where these late round running backs have a way better chance of climbing up not only depth charts, but just really outperforming their ADPs than later round wide receivers, right? It's way harder when we see it for wide receivers, tight ends buried down depth charts. That's why we always say, these late round running backs are key. And so these guys do go super late. So you're right there. Taking a shot at one of them, it's just when I get calls on SiriusXM and they're like, I'm only in two leagues, and that's totally okay if you are. Which one would you take? And I'm like, 2 leagues, I'd probably just take none of them, because you just do not know what could happen. But with Liam Cohen coming over there, you're right. Ambiguous backfields is something that we always kind of want to target to try and take, sprinkle in as many of these guys as you can. And so they ranked third in yards per carry last season, 6th in EPA per rush attempt. Not to say it's going to be the same thing bringing him over to Jacksonville, but we did see what he was able to do with those running backs over there. So you're hoping at the end of the day that one of these guys can emerge and it not be a 3-headed monster.
Because again, once we do get the clarity, our in-season ranks are going to be changing in a hurry. So same thing with kind of the Dallas Cowboys going on. Okay, guys, again, it's so unclear. So accordingly, they're cheaper. I really do want to try to leave drafts with at least one dart here. Hopefully it is going to be the right one. We'll continue to, again, keep you updated as we get more information. Let's talk about every single fantasy player's favorite offensive coordinator, Arthur Smith and the Pittsburgh Steelers. Kendall, Artie is at it again. Jaylen Warren resting with the starters. Very good news for Jaylen Warren, RB1 truthers like myself, so love seeing that. However, it was not Caleb Johnson getting the start. Instead, Kenneth Gainwell, formerly of the Eagles, signed a small deal with the Steelers this offseason, actually got the start, played the first 4 plays, and then was out for the rest of the evening. So again, it's not a situation where I know some people were saying Caleb Johnson looked slow out there. He didn't look all that good. Yeah, he didn't rip off a 50-yard touchdown, okay? I'm not too concerned with that. Whatever your opinion was on Caleb Johnson before, we really shouldn't be letting a handful of touches completely sway whatever we thought. More so, Kendall, I want to ask the question, like, should we actually be considering someone like a Kenneth Gainwell as a threat to just make this a bit more of a committee? Because again, it's 2025. Almost every single team is going to use 2 running backs. We can live with that in fantasy land. It gets a little bit more complicated though when we have a third or fourth party involved.
I want to say no, we shouldn't worry about Kenneth Gainwell. And I'm like, no, we're not. Don't ask me questions about Kenneth Gainwell to people today. I'm like, I don't care. And then I look and I say, you're right, Ian. This is Arthur freaking Smith, who hates our fantasy teams every single season. I think every day, Ian, about what I would say if I came face to face with Arthur Smith in real life. I would probably just be like, why? Why do you hate us? What's going on here? What did we ever do to you? So at some part of me is like, well, maybe we should be talking about Kenneth Gainwell. Now, I think this is, again, why preseason is important, but we're just getting the first breadcrumb leading up into the first week of the NFL season. So to me, I want to see what happens with the second set of games and the third set of games, because if we continue to see this, then yes, I'm going to be a little bit nervous. But I think more with Kenneth Gainwell, it's probably if Jaylen Warren were to miss time, it wouldn't be let's Caleb Johnson to the moon kind of situation. It'd be like, okay, well now it's still going to be a 1A, 1B or a 1-2 situation, but he's more involved than maybe we expected. So I think that's how I took this. Again, it's Arthur Smith. He hates us and he hates fantasy players altogether. So maybe he's just saying, yeah, we're not going to let them have peace or happiness or anything like that. But right now I'm trying not to overreact and thinking that if there was an injury more specifically to Warren, that Caleb Johnson wouldn't be just the far and away, Caleb Johnson to the moon guy. He would be involved.
I think that is really the biggest takeaway here. I don't think it's like a Detroit or maybe even Minnesota situation where you have that standalone value, but then that huge contingent handcuff upside. Yeah. I think Gainwell is at least sitting there in a similar matter as Cordero Patterson in some of these past Arthur Smith offenses. miss you, CPAT. But yeah, again, it's a situation where I would love to say, oh my God, Jalen Warren with an 80-90% roll, that'd be amazing. I just don't think when they do have enough trust in Gainwell, that's ever going to really be coming to fruition. So look, both Warren and Caleb Johnson, depending on where you're playing, are being priced as RB3s anyway. So it's not like, again, we have this perfect profile to begin with, but not good. And an offense that, again, we don't exactly expect to be lighting up the scoreboard on a weekly basis. Next up, we've been trying to figure out who the handcuff running back is going to be to Kyren Williams in Los Angeles, Kendall, because clearly Kyren, the running back there, especially after getting that big-time contract extension. Good for you, Kyren. Seems like maybe after last week, it could be Blake Corum, though. He actually got the start, scored twice, and we actually did see, again, that through 4 drives with the starters, it was Blake getting 59% of the snaps, 64% of the rush attempts, splitting the routes evenly with rookie Jarquez Hunter. So Jarquez Hunter also kept playing through drive 7. Now, with Sean McVay and the Rams in the preseason, he's been one of these coaches that really seems to put less into it than anyone else out there. Yeah. So I'm not going to sit here and say that again. A couple of drives where it just completely cements Blake Corum as the next man up here. But, Kendall, I would give him the edge right now. And as we've seen over these past few years, whether it was Gurley, CJ Anderson, Malcolm Brown for stretches, Darrell Henderson, Cam Akers, like Sean McVay has been willing, really whoever's been his running back, to leave them on the field more than most. Rams were easily number 1 in the NFL last year in terms of percentage of games to have a running back playing at least 90% and 75% of the snaps. So again, hopefully Kyron's healthy the entire season. But right now, Kendall, you're our waiver wire expert. You write the article every single week for us at fantasylife.com. I think you would have to give Blake Corum the nod. God forbid something happened to Kyron.
Yeah, I think you have to. It was interesting reading some of the reports today, though, because people totally took it and spun it in a way, Ian, that I didn't even think about, where they were like, it's bad news for Blake Corum because, when we look at this team, they usually sit their starters during the preseason. And so the more that he played, we actually should, it was like a total mind melt where I was like, wait, what are we overthinking this? Are we underthinking this? Right now, I will say I'm still having Blake Corum as the RB2, as the backup to Kyren Williams. I know we're trying to really read the room, and it was crazy some of the stats that were brought up, like the last, like Ronnie Rivers, Corum, Williams sat last preseason, and because he's playing now that it's worse. I'm like, okay, wait, let's not get too overreactive right now. But it's just one of those things where, again, he's still the RB2 in my mind. That's kind of how I'm drafting. I do understand the Jarquez Hunter love, though, because they did go out into the draft, they got him, but I don't think we need to totally overreact yet. I still have him, like I said, as the backup to Kyren Williams. And in terms of backups, Ian, I know that you and I talk a lot on separate shows about just handcuffs and the guys that we kind of want. This is not guys that we're necessarily there. We can name probably 5 better handcuffs that we like to go and get besides right here. So when we look at our rankings and stuff, you guys can go and see that. So it's not to say you shouldn't be drafting Blake Corum, throw a late round flyer on Jarquez Hunter, but it's just one of those things where when I see this now, Ian, to me, in my mind, I still do believe, though, if Kyren Williams were to go down, maybe it's more of a split between those two than really Corum running away with everything. But it's something we're just going to have to wait and see.
It is one of those things where, yes, it is relevant. I did a pair of 14-team, 16-round drafts last weekend. Okay, yes, guys like this will become relevant. But as you can see in our rankings over at fantasylife.com, code Ian 20% off. You can actually, again, Blake Corum, he's my RB 61 at this point in time. All right. So, yes, at a certain point in the draft, anyone's going to become fantasy relevant. But guys like Tyler Algier, Ray Davis, and, those true handcuffs of the world, still certainly people we should be paying more attention to. The real panic in LA, Kendall, is just continuously this Matthew Stafford back injury. He was supposed to be returned to practice today. Instead, they are delaying that, I guess a little bit sore after throwing on Saturday. He is now hanging out in a immortal chamber, which advertises itself as a wellness device that aims to optimize human performance and promote holistic health through a combination of non-invasive technologies. I don't love that. 4 weeks before the season, Kendall, for my 37-year-old quarterback. Is that fair to not love?
No, that's fair. That's a very LA thing, though. I'm going to be honest. I just pulled it up and it said immortal chambers near me and 6 popped up. So maybe I need to get on this trend. Yeah, I don't know what's going on. But no, it's not good because we expected him. The one thing with Sean McVay, and you and I talked to Coach Speak Index a lot, he's usually been pretty good. And so when you say, okay, Matthew Stafford's going to come out and be ready to practice on Monday, and now he's too sore, he shows up in street clothes, I think it gets to a point where we do have to talk about it because if we get Jimmy G week 1, I mean, Puka Nacua, and I've seen it kind of trickle down in drafts right now, Ian. I've been in a draft where Puka Nacua really fell to the back half of the first round at that 1-2 turn. And Devontae Adams, who we both love Devontae Adams. I know I do, but if he has to get with Jimmy G again, he's probably going to request to leave because he's like, I can't do this anymore. So it's just, I'm nervous about it just a little bit.
I am too. And it's not something we can just dismiss and say it's Puka Nacua. He's so good. So is Malik Neighbors. So is Brian Thomas Jr. So is Drake London. Like, we're talking about him relative to the other best players of his position. So yeah, tiebreaker in round 1, guys. All due respect to Puka, I do think it is fair to wonder about going elsewhere because, yeah, I'm not going to exactly love life. It is going to be Jimmy G instead of Matthew Stafford under center. Last one, though, guys, is this Jets backfield that was supposed to be more so the Breece Hall show. And yeah, we thought Braylon Allen was going to be involved, but a third party appeared, a wild third party appeared, Kendall, if you will, Mr. Isaiah Davis. So on drive 1 with the starters, Justin Fields capped things off with a nice little scramble touchdown. Reminder, he can do that. It was Breece Hall, 50% snaps, Braylon Allen, 20%. And yes, Isaiah Davis at 30%, even soaking up the same number of routes as Breece Hall. Shout out to Isaiah Davis. If you guys watched that Fields scramble touchdown, he literally was running to the end zone pretending like Fields was throwing him the ball. Guys got to keep chasing him instead of turning his back and going to tackle Fields. So high IQ play by Isaiah Davis aside, Kendall, not ideal for Mr. Breece Hall. Again, no debate who the RB1 is in New York, okay? We saw Breece Hall get to rest with the starters after that. Meanwhile, Braylon and Isaiah were both playing up until the 5th and 6th drives of the game. But it is a situation where, similar to Pittsburgh, okay, like we're not expecting the Jets to score a ton of points. We also have to worry about Fields scrambling like he was doing, not exactly checking the ball down. Breece Hall is someone who usually is going inside the top 15, top 16 running backs. I'm not going to lie, I haven't been drafting a ton of them this offseason to begin with, Kendall, and I'm not exactly planning on turning that around after seeing what we saw last week.
Yeah, it's tough with like the price tag that he has too. I mean, you're getting him RB 15, 16, like that's tough to see. Now, I will say, the rotation that we saw, they were rotating backs, whatever, in 1 or 2 plays, like that is guaranteed not necessarily to be the rotation once the season starts. But these preseason games, like if there was a backfield that I'm saying, okay, I'm watching very closely, it's probably the Jacksonville Jaguars and the Jets, because I'm like, okay, if this really is how it's going to go, I need a clearer picture to know if we should really be bringing Breece Hall kind of down in our rankings because of this. The bigger takeaway for me, Ian, was that Braylon Allen is going far too late in drafts. If this is really showing what they expect in 2025, and we've heard this from Aaron Glenn or like months ago too, he said it was going to be a three-headed thing, like they're each going to be involved. And so if that's the case, yes, Isaiah Davis could be a really good, late round flyer. But if we're talking like Braylon Allen, he's going 150 plus, like way, it depends on where you go, but 150 plus across many platforms, he could have standalone value by the time, we're looking around in like mid-November or even October and saying, wow, he was severely undervalued. So if this is really the way that they're going to go, we should expect his price to rise, and we probably want to be the first ones to go and do that and get him.
Is a situation where, no, I'm not all of a sudden hyped about Braylon Allen because they opened a big hole for him that he gained 10 yards on. I saw some ridiculous reactions to that. Fine enough play. It was a good one cut, but just chill out, people, please. I know we're starved for highlights, and that's all fine and dandy. But yeah, again, just seeing, the use is actually reflecting what we're hearing out of training camp. That's what this is all about. And that's what the utilization report is all about. So one final time, guys, make sure you check out Dwayne's article on fantasylife.com. But otherwise, yeah, this has been the utilization report presented by DraftKings. Do want to remind you guys that you can join a DraftKings Survivor pool today. Sign up using promo code FANTASYLIFE, place a $10 plus NFL futures bet, and claim your ticket to the Survivor pool. That's promo code FANTASYLIFE only at DraftKings Sportsbook. Been talking about a lot of good, Kendall, but as always, those dang injury gods had to rear their ugly heads and give us some new stuff to worry about. Starting off with Titans RB2, Tajay Spears, getting the dreaded high ankle sprain. He is expected to be out a few weeks per head coach Brian Callahan. So Dwayne actually mentioned also in the utilization report that we weren't seeing a ton from Spears in the first place, even before he got injured, a situation in Tennessee where Pollard, yes, the expected starter, but we're thinking it might be more 50-50 than it actually wound up being. But man, might end up being the Tony Pollard show if Spears is in fact going to already be missing regular season time. So, Kendall, we actually had 5 games last year with Tyjae Spears out of the picture, and it was the Tony Pollard show. We're talking about combined carries and targets of 22, 24, 31, 29, and 22. And he was even topping out at 94% snaps in one of those games, really high up there in the other ones as well. So it's a situation where personally, Kendall, I know I haven't drafted a ton of Pollard, and part of my reasoning was like, okay, he ran pretty hot last year with Tyjae Spears being out. Pollard looked better a full year removed from the tightrope injury, and we still only got a low-end RB2 performance. That said, we like Cam Ward. We think he could give us a higher scoring ceiling than what we saw. And also, shout out to ETR's Brandon Thorne. He actually has his Titans offensive line as a top 9 group entering next season, 11th highest paid group in the league overall. So Tony Pollard, Kendall, someone who quietly might actually be a pretty darn nice 0 RB pick.
Yeah, now especially, I had a good amount of Tajay Spears going into it, and it's one of these things where this is really disappointing. Like any high ankle sprain, you are obviously very worried, and then they're saying, "Oh, well, he might be ready for week 1. We just don't know." The one thing that we do know is that his preseason is over. So coming back from those high ankle sprains too, like it takes a while to get back to 100%. And so for me, I'm obviously going to take my foot off the gas and drafting Tajay Spears, depending on unless I'm in a draft where he falls a lot. But you said it, Pollard, his playing time obviously increased last season when we saw Tajay Spears go down, went from 60 to 70, 67% of the offensive snaps to 82 to 94%. And we know that he's just going to be the guy. They didn't invest in this backfield either. So it's not like we can talk about a rookie that we're saying, well, now, this guy's able to come up. And even if it's a late round sleeper like a Taj Brooks or a Kyle Monangai, they just didn't have it. They didn't invest like that. So this is unfortunate for Tajay Spears and Tajay Spears draft, aka me. But Tony Pollard, yeah, you have to now move him. You have to not necessarily move him too high up the ranks, but if you're in drafts right now as a 0 RB drafter, like you said, you get really solid wide receivers, maybe one of those elite tight ends, and you can come back with Tony Pollard, who we've seen in the past just get that workload when Tajay Spears has been out. You're feeling pretty good.
100%. Another RB2 injury, though, that is going to change the way perhaps we're thinking about the other backs involved. Rachaad White dealing with a groin injury. Didn't look good out there. We did hear from head coach Todd Bowles that he's day-to-day, but I'm sorry, people. I don't really give a crap what Todd Bowles says about injuries. This is the same man who last October said that Chris Godwin, who at this point seems like he is going to be missing early regular season time, Todd Bowles last October said that Chris Godwin, he thought had a chance to return if they could make a deep playoff run. So excuse me when Bowles says day to day that I don't really give a shoot about it. So Dr. Jeff Mueller is saying that we're probably looking at a grade 2 groin strain based on the way it's been described. He said that could cost Rachaad White 3 to 4 plus weeks. So look, if you guys want to continue hyping up Bucky Irving, go right ahead. Dwayne's the biggest Bucky truther on the planet right now. He has him as RB8 right behind that, Derrick Henry, CMC, Ashton, Genty, and, those kind of guys going there. I do think RB8 is about the highest you can go with Bucky, and I'm not going to overly bicker about it. That said, Kendall, maybe, just maybe, Sean Tucker could be the winner here. This is someone who last year had the highest explosive run play rate in the NFL, also led all running backs in yards per route run. So our own Matthew Berry said back at the Combine in March that he believed that Tucker actually did have an opportunity of straight up leaping past Rachaad White. Now it seems like maybe that opportunity could be here more than ever with White already dealing with this injury.
Dang, I didn't know you were a Bucky Irving hater. What's going on, Ian? I didn't know you were a hater like that.
I prefer Josh Jacobs and Jonathan Taylor, and now I'm a Bucky hater, but I guess I got to own it. So,
I mean, that's fine. As we say, RB8, you're a hater, Ian. I can't believe you have him ranked so low. But I mean, yeah, I guess, when we look at depth charts and we say, okay, who could be the next man up if an injury occurs? That's kind of how I look at Tampa Bay, to be totally honest, because I do like Bucky Irving, maybe not as much as Ian Hartitz and Dwayne McFarland too. Ian hates him, I guess, but it's one of these things where, again, we look down depth charts and we say who could be the next man up. I've never been necessarily enamored with Rachaad White anyway, so it's one of these things where Sean Tucker would step up again into a role if we saw Bucky Irving go down. But it just feels like, from what we've heard and what we've seen, that he's just going to get that huge RB1 workload. So it's one of those where we have to watch and see when Rachaad White comes back. But yeah, Sean Tucker, solid, late round flyer just in case any of them were to go down.
Again, traditional 10 or 12 team league, there's a good chance you're not getting all the way down there to Sean
Yeah.
Tucker. But I know there's some sickos out there watching this. And again, Sean Tucker is someone we're, again, similar in that Blake Corum mold, if you will, could be worth a very capital LATE round dart. Last one, Kendall, is unfortunately Jayden Reed showing up to the game in a boot. He is dealing with a foot sprain. Also considered day-to-day. Head coach Matt LaFleur says hopeful Reed will be ready for week one. So we did see after Packers practice, the whole team was doing push-ups, and Jayden Reed, boot and all, was joining them. So dog levels off the chart. I don't think any of us are questioning, Jayden Reed's just will to play or anything like that. But it's not ideal, Kendall. And I'm not exactly, dropping Jayden a ton in the ranks. Again, very possible he's going to be fine for week one. But Dontavian Wicks also dealing with a calf injury. Christian Watson still on the PUP list with that ACL injury. If anything, I just think we got to really start wrapping our minds around drafting a lot more Matthew Golden. Again, round one talent. We already liked him to begin with. And now we don't have to worry about a lot of target competition. I mean, man, looking at this wide receiver 4 price tag, one of my favorite targets as we get into the thick of draft season.
Yeah, and I couldn't believe it, Ian, but and everywhere besides Underdog, these guys are cheap. And so we talked about throwing, dart throws on the Jacksonville Jaguars running backs because they were going late enough where it was like, okay, well, let's just try and pick the right one. And hopefully, like I said, it is the right one. But for Matthew Golden, especially, he's got a price of 101 on ESPN, 121 on Yahoo. We see him go 111 on CBS. I'm using the ADP tool, by the way, on fantasylife.com. Everyone should go and check it out. But compared to a 74, 75 price tag, he's going pretty late, and Jayden Reed's been doing the same thing. So I do hate this injury. I'm in the stacked league, that's going on right now. You guys can go and check it out. We've been tweeting about it over on X or whatever you call it now, Ian. But it's one of these things where it's unfortunate for Jayden Reed drafters now, and you do kind of have to think, okay, Matthew Golden, they Josh Jacobs came out and said they needed an alpha wide receiver 1, and up until this point, I was like, okay, do they have that? Do they have that now with Matthew Golden? But with injuries, we know that guys climb up depth charts, and he was probably already going to just be one of the focal points in this offense. But if Jayden Reed isn't ready to go week 1, then yeah, Matthew Golden to the moon, dare I say.
He's sticking out as one of these guys. I mean, Matthew Friedman and I did a show last week, just players who basically are going a lot later on home sites than they are in the paid leagues, the real-time sports FFPCs of the world. That's Matthew Golden. I mean, we're talking about pick 86 over at real-time sports. And as you said, pick 121 on Yahoo. I mean, that is ridiculous, Kendall. We got DeAndre Hopkins and Adam Thielen going a few picks later. I mean, the other guy behind him is dead. All right, cross him off the list then. Okay. Again, Matthew Golden, someone just going so late right now. Really is someone I am at this point trying to leave every draft with. Again, guys, there's been some injuries we are keeping an eye on. We still got some bold preseason takeaways. First, though, a word to our friends over at Renegade Fantasy. Fantasy football players, aren't you done watching your season crumble because of injuries or underperforming players? Well, welcome to Renegade Fantasy Football, the only app that lets you substitute players in real time. No more losing Sundays, no more lost points, no more could have won if. With Renegade, you're not just a GM, you're the coach. Call the shots, make the moves when you're a league. Step out of that luxury box and onto the field. This is fantasy football without limits. This is Renegade Fantasy. You can join the Fantasy Life League today at fantasylife.renegadefantasy.com. Kendall, we've tried to be just rational people here talking about preseason usage and all that. But at some point, you got to say fantasy football isn't for the rational. It's about saying bold, wild stuff and trying to have some fun out here. So want to do, again, an overreaction you could say about the preseason that we want to make anyway. Lead us off, K-Dog.
Oh, I love overreactions. As you know, Ian, I did Overreaction Mondays. So people know, take this with a little hint of drama and maybe like a little bit of sarcasm, but not really, because I do believe that Jaxson Dart this season could actually be our waiver wire hero. We saw it last season with a Sam Darnold. We saw it last season with a Baker Mayfield. So if you're looking around on the waiver wire and your quarterbacks have, for whatever reason, gone down with injuries, I think Jaxson Dart could be the hero for you in 2025. We saw him in the preseason games over the weekend. It's not going to be right away. Like we said, Russell Wilson's still going to be out there, but this organization needs wins, and they need wins quickly. You still have Malik Neighbors out there. So to me, Jaxson Dart could be our hero this season. We just don't know it yet.
Love that call. Again, those rushing QBs, guys, very hard to bust if they get the opportunity. I'm going to go a little bit deeper, actually not deeper than you, but deeper than some of these other people. All right. On Reddit today, shout out, love our Reddit community. We had a Fantasy Life AMA, and Dwayne and Matthew Friedman were like, oh, yeah, Tedero McMillan and Trayvon Henderson. We knew they were good, okay? The real winner of the preseason, everyone, is Broncos wide receiver Marvin Mims, who looks like he's actually finally being set up to have a full-time role. We're talking about an 82% route rate with the starters, trailing only Cortland Sutton. Okay, what's matters with an 82% route rate? He did not even clear 50% snaps last year, let alone routes, until the wild card game against the Bills. Again, nobody should be doubting the two-time All-Pro returner's talent at this point. They've used him in this fantasy-friendly mix with screens and downfield opportunities over the past couple years. He's been so efficient. We just haven't had the full-time role. Certainly seems to be on the table now, and I do think he has a chance of joining former guys like Miles Austin, Rashid Shaheed, these baller returners who get schemed up touches and then finally prove to be so good that you can't keep them off the field. Marvin Mims, my second most productive, I will believe, Broncos wide receiver this year, and someone I am now willing to get that Rashid Shaheed, Michael Pittman, wide receiver 4, wide receiver 5 point in the draft, where really after that, Kendall, again, it really does become a wasteland and we want to start drafting more running backs anyway. So Jaxson Dart, Marvin Mims, you heard it here first. And if we're wrong, just please forget it and don't yell at us.
Don't remember this.
With that said, guys, we're going to wrap up this edition of the Fantasy Life Show. Thank you for tuning in. Like and subscribe if you're into that kind of thing. And otherwise, just have a great rest of your day. So for Kendall, for producer Matt, for producer Kelsey, I'm Ian. Thanks again for tuning in. And until next time, take care, everybody.